本節目內主持人及嘉賓的言論純屬個人意見，並不代表本台立場。
Hi, welcome to Boiling Point. Today, Stephen is my guest, and
Hi.
Julian couldn't make it. Stephen, could you introduce yourself first, and then we'll discuss a few things. But seeing as though it's your first time on the show, and viewers probably, or some viewers may recognize you. You do have a certain profile.
Really?
I think so, but perhaps why don't you go ahead and tell people what you're willing to tell them about yourself.
Well, I suppose if I'm an Evergrande fan from Guangzhou, then I'm an English dog.
Yep, you're English.
Yep. Yeah, I've been trying to learn Chinese for about 30 years unsuccessfully. But recently I became the editor of Independent Chinese Pen Translation Quarterly, so I'm going to have to learn to improve it a bit. I was the lucky guy who opened the Occupy Hotel after the Umbrella Movement.
Yes, and I think that's what makes you kind of famous in Hong Kong. You were running the, was it called the Umbrella Revolution Hotel in Wan Chai?
Occupy Hotel.
Occupy Hotel.
Yeah.
But it was decorated like Mongkok, wasn't it? Not Admiralty. It had umbrella. I remember I went there. It had like Umbrella Revolution on the wall.
Yeah, we had banners and posters from the Admiralty area. We had stuff from Causeway Bay and from Mongkok. Yeah, there was a mixture.
And what happened to all that stuff, that heritage-like stuff?
It's in safekeeping.
Okay,
Yeah.
Okay, great. And there's one other thing that I think you're famous for is I think you co-authored an article that discussed the Chinese president's alleged plagiarism of a PhD thesis. Is that correct?
Yeah, I did, yeah. Actually, Chung wrote an article for Stand News about the plagiarism or alleged plagiarism. Chung, the author of 来生不做中国人, I Don't Want to Be Chinese, wrote this article after reading Xi Jinping's PhD dissertation and comparing it with other works which were published around that time, some of them before. And he judged on the basis of that it was probably, Xi's dissertation was probably not written by him. And yeah, I translated some extracts from that article and we published it in Asia Sentinel. And yeah, that was shortly before I got a warning from the police that I should stop writing articles. Although I don't actually think it was necessarily that article. I think it was the one I wrote in Chinese, making fun of Xi Jinping and suggesting that he might have a spanking fetish.
Wow, okay. Okay, well, thanks for that introduction, Stephen.
You're welcome.
I think for this show, we can just discuss some of the recent events in Hong Kong and their broader or deeper meaning.
Sure.
And before the show, I had a look at some of the headlines, and one of them was about mainland tourists camping in parks. It was the May Day holiday, and so I think there was a lot of mainland tourists in Hong Kong, and then there was another story about, the headline was 12-kilometre Hong Kong link road to Mega Bridge to be completed this month.
Okay.
And then there was another headline, Hong Kong taxpayers to pay $5.45 billion for expansion of Disneyland.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I think there's a connection between these three stories. It's connected to tourism into Hong Kong from the mainland, infrastructure, and the expenditure of Hong Kong taxpayers' money.
Mm-hmm.
And the other, I'm not sure if you noticed or heard about it, but there's this Chinese billionaire. I think his name is Guo
Mm-hmm.
and he gave an interview to Apple Daily and said that the Chinese government is trying to control Hong Kong via the real estate market and via people. Mm-hmm. The immigration into Hong Kong from mainland China.
Mm-hmm.
So I think all these headlines and these stories are all connected to basically what people in Hong Kong call mainlandization.
Right.
So tourism, from mainland tourism in Hong Kong,
Mm-hmm.
infrastructure that makes it easier for the tourists to come to Hong Kong,
Mm-hmm.
and the using of taxpayers' money to build like these tourist attractions like Disney,
Mm-hmm.
and the bridges that What do you think of all this? Is there a connection, or am I a conspiracy theorist?
I don't think you have to be a conspiracy theorist to see that these are trends which, as you say, do lead to the sort of slow, assimilation of Hong Kong into the mainland, and but I'm not one of those who thinks that this is all a bad thing. Okay, I think that there are benefits as well, not just to Hong Kong but to the mainland, I really believe in Hong Kong as a kind of a sort of breathing hole, for the mainland. I think we are an example here of how a society can actually have freedom of expression, have a certain amount of democracy, although it's kind of crippled one. We do at least have elections, and so I think that's very powerful inspiration to people on the mainland who who are always being told, you can't have democracy because then it will end up in chaos. We had a civil disobedience movement here, which was internationally remarked on as being one of the most peaceful and civilized which you could ever have anywhere in the world. And so I actually don't really believe that Hong Kong is just being swallowed up or kind of neutralized or being robbed of its culture. I think there's a cultural exchange going on between the mainland and Hong Kong. I think, I remember 20 years ago.
Exchange.
Yeah, 20 years ago, I remember people used to say, in Hong Kong, they used to joke and they used to say, China is being handed back to Hong Kong. It's not all one way. That's what people used to say, when in '97, Hong Kong is not returning to the mainland. I think the influence of Hong Kong and universal values that I think most people believe in here is actually a lot more powerful than the reverse. Even though the numbers, even though they've got the numbers, obviously, we're like what 1% of the population, but the power of the ideas, and the example of a pluralistic city with freedom of expression, peaceful civil disobedience movements, that is an incredible inspiration.
But isn't all that just being squeezed and will eventually disappear?
No, I don't think so. I mean, yeah, there's some squeezing, and there is some kind of loss of pluralism and some loss of variety in the traditional media, but it's like I say, it's a two-way process. You have a lot of mainlanders who come here. They come here because they seek inspiration. They come here on the June the 4th, which is going to be taking place in 1 month. They come here because it's the only city in the whole of the PRC where we can actually commemorate the massacre of June the 4th.
Okay,
you know?
I know Western journalists put that in every story they write about the June 4. It's like,
but it's true and it's important.
De rigueur, or it's like they're required to put that story, put that line. And those June 4 stories, of course, from the Western media are the same every year. All they do is change the date. But actually, on a previous
episode... It's a slight exaggeration, but yeah, I mean, there is a certain repetitiveness to it.
Because actually, we discussed it on a previous episode, but the June 4 candlelight vigil in Victoria Park is a ceremony. And it's very much like a religious ceremony, or going to church.
Well, you're commemorating, and you know, the death. You know, some people say the sacrifice. You know, of a lot of people. So it's, you know, that's inevitable, I think.
But is it necessary to have all the candles and the crying and the implicit idea that Hong Kong people are Chinese? Is it necessary to have this kind of ideological element to the ceremony?
Well, you know, you're touching on a lot of different and very sensitive issues. You know, I mean, as we were saying earlier, you know, this whole idea of what is Chinese. You know, I think this is really core to what a lot of people in Hong Kong are asking themselves. You know, are we Hong Kongers? Are we Chinese? And as I was saying to you, you know, if you actually look at this word Chinese, how do you actually translate this word into the, you know, Hanyu, the Chinese language? You know. There are actually, like, I counted the other day, there are like, you know, 10 or 20 different ways of translating this word, Chinese. Whoops. Because, you know, it really depends what you mean. You know, are you talking about people who write in Chinese characters? Are you talking about people who identify with the People's Republic of China, who are citizens of that country? Does it mean anybody who, you know, has an ancestor who was born in China? You know, there are all kinds of definitions of what it means to be Chinese, and I think we need to be really specific here.
Okay.
You know?
Now, I want to bring up what happened at that Eastern Evergrande football match. Because the Chinese fans called the Hong Kong fans British dogs, right?
Yeah, and they said that they were going to wipe out the poison of Hong Kong independence.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then the Asian Soccer Federation, or FIFA, the Asian unit of FIFA said, okay, that's just some type of insult based on nationality. So actually, you know, in a sense, the FIFA body in Asia is basically saying that Hong Kong people are a people, because they said it's like a national, it was an insult to the Hong Kong nation, basically. A national insult, which is very interesting.
The cultural identity, at very least, yeah. I mean, people here, they have a different cultural identity, you know. I mean, you know, if we have a different history, we have, you know, a different language, a different legal system, you know, so yeah, we have a different identity.
But when does identity become nation? I mean, people always say it's Hong Kong identity, Hong Kong identity. Yeah. But is it in fact Hong Kong ethnicity?
Well, I think that Hong Kong people were denied their right to self-determination mainly because the authorities on the mainland demanded that. You know, if you go back in history, you'll see that under the United Nations charters, any colony should have the right to self-determine what will happen after decolonization. But the People's Republic of China demanded that the United Kingdom should remove Hong Kong and Macau from the list of colonies in order that they would not have that right. You know, so that is a question that's left over from history. You know,
so in a sense, the Hong Kong nation is like a bastard ethnicity. It's the illegitimate.
Well, that's a colourful way of putting it. Yeah,
the illegitimate ethnicity. It is a real ethnicity, but people aren't recognizing it because it is the. It's the result of, you know, British, what do you call it, colonialism or gunboat diplomacy or base, you know.
Yeah, I mean, we have here, I think, the biggest growth of the population here was in the 50s and 60s when you had a lot of people escaping from the People's Republic of China, you know. So, yeah, we have that, you know, that as some part of you know, our collective memory as well. You know, a rejection of the history of the People's Republic.
Yeah, and by the way, I was at that soccer game, and the Hong Kong fans were chanting "Gina goal" at the Evergrande fans. So it's like at that soccer match, it kind of it's a demonstration of the fact that although a fact that may not be recognised, that Hong Kong people don't see themselves as Chinese, and Chinese people don't see Hong Kong people as Chinese. So it's actually two-way ethnicity, right?
Yeah, it's true, yeah.
So it's not Hong Kong people demanding something that the Chinese people kind of, in a sense, don't already admit.
Yeah, I mean, it's almost as if we're like a foreign body, and if you study biology, one of the things that you'll notice is that, that foreign bodies tend to get ejected, by the corpus, which is hosting them,
That's an interesting way to put it too, yeah. Okay, we've got like 4 minutes left. The other bit of interesting news, I thought, was this is from the South China Morning Post. They said the Hong Kong's biggest bus operator, KMB, is launching a new fleet. And in the article, it said the new buses are catered to the Asian physique. They're made in Malaysia. I'm just wondering, were the old buses made in Britain or something?
Well, they do remind me of the buses that we used to have in the UK. Well, we still have in the UK. Yeah, I mean, they're double-deckers, right? And that's like a peculiarity. England isn't the only country that has double-deckers, but it certainly reminds me of London when I see those double-decker buses.
I think it was so strange that this article mentioned the Asian physique. To me, it seems like this is another example of China, Beijing communists trying to stress the racial difference. So this is kind of China's racial nationalism.
Yeah, I mean, I think what you're trying to say is that they're bringing in smaller buses, right? Because
I don't think there's any difference in the seats.
No, you don't think so?
I don't think so.
So what is the difference then?
Between the buses?
Yeah.
I don't think there's any difference in I mean, the buses, I guess they're just not, they're not the ones that are made in Britain. They're buses that probably, I think it's probably a Chinese company with a factory in Malaysia.
Yeah.
But I thought that was interesting. There's the other bits of interesting news is that, Joshua Wong and Chris Patton spoke in the US, as did Martin Lee and Lam Wing Ki, who, and I paid attention, and this is what Patton said.
Okay.
This is what Patton said about localism or the independence movement. The argument for democracy becomes confused if you start arguing for something which simply isn't going to happen. I want to stop right there because it sounds like he says that democracy is possible in Hong Kong.
Yeah.
But, if you ask me, it's like, he's saying you shouldn't be arguing for independence because it's impossible, but people can easily turn that around and say, look, democracy is impossible too, so what's the difference? But anyway, he goes on. I can't think of a large country or any country which would support Hong Kong becoming an independent sovereign state. It's just not going to happen. And what does happen is that people in China are only fed stories about Hong Kong wanting to be independent of the rest of China. They don't know about the struggle for democracy. Within Hong Kong itself, I can understand why people feel so frustrated by the lack of democratic progress that they think they've got to go for something bigger. But it really does risk reducing support for what is the very powerful cause of democracy.
Well, I mean, my take on that is, I think that it's what is actually happening at the moment is that the People's Republic government is actually they are actually fanning the flames of independence movement in Hong Kong, because if they were to just ignore it, then I think probably most people would not be demanding independence. But they make such a big deal out of it that it actually just generates more support. I think that most people in Hong Kong would probably be satisfied if we could just, have a high degree of self-determination, autonomy, choose our own leaders with, genuine suffrage, rather than the kind of fake elections that they tried to impose. And but because they went back on their promise of allowing true universal suffrage and gave us this kind of stupid fake, sorry, I didn't mean to say stupid, but unpopular, plan, that naturally leads people to say, well, if we can't actually get true democracy, then why shouldn't we have independence and become truly self-governing? Because that's the only way in which we're going to have democracy. So I think that it's this issue of increasing calls for independence is actually all being stirred up by the mainland, their interference, their kind of obsession with control, basically.
Well, I think it's mainlandisation that is encouraging Hong Kong people to feel they are not Chinese and to express Hong Kong identity or Hong Kong nationalism, Hong Kong nation. Mm-hmm. And the funny thing is, say for the US or British, Hong Kong nationalism is like, for them it's a double-edged sword. I mean, they know that Hong Kong nationalism is a way to resist Chinese system, the Chinese system coming into Hong Kong, but at the same time, they don't want it to get out of control and to be some type of, a big violent event in Hong Kong either. So they're trying to have their cake and eat it too. Mm-hmm. And so you see Patton saying this type of thing, that the independence movement dilutes support for the democracy movement. I think we're out of time, but we'll be back shortly. Operator?
經錯過我哋精彩嘅節目，而家上嚟呢個網址就可以訂閱晒我哋8大頻道，付費之後仲可以重溫晒所有精彩嘅節目。記得要訂閱我哋嘅 YouTube Channel 同埋讚好我哋嘅 Facebook 專頁啊！